My sister bought these nightstands from Facebook Marketplace for $50 and asked me to paint them for her boys' rooms. She had some latex paint on hand, so today I'm sharing how to paint furniture with latex paint. First, I of course removed all of the hardware with my screwdriver. This electric screwdriver makes it so easy. I love this thing. Then I cleaned them off with Crud Cutter. You never know where used furniture has been, and paint doesn't like to stick to some things. Crud Cutter eats through grease and grime, so all of that stuff goes away pretty easily. I planned to spray the paint onto these nightstands, so I taped off the drawers with some plastic and painter's tape so the paint wouldn't get inside the drawers. I'm going for a nice clean look. Then I put the squishy interface pad and a 220 grit piece of sandpaper on my sander and scuff sanded the surface of the nightstands. I just wanted to scuff up the surface to help the paint stick. This is really important when you're painting with latex paint, since latex paint does not adhere super well. Then I cleaned off the dust. I invested in a new Surf Prep shop vac to go with my sander, and I'm so excited for it, but I haven't figured out how to attach a brush to it yet. So I just placed my normal brush attachment on the end. It worked all right, but I definitely need to figure out a better way. Then we took the nightstands out to the garage, wiped them down with a tack cloth to make sure all of the dust was gone, and then I sprayed a couple of coats of clear shellac on them. This clear shellac is my primer, and it will help the paint stick better, and it will prevent stains from the wood from coming through my paint. While that was drying, I went back downstairs in my little workshop and mixed up the paint. My sister had this gallon of blue latex paint that she used on the walls, but she wanted the nightstands to be a little bit darker. So I mixed in some black latex paint to make the paint darker, and then I poured it into my paint sprayer, putting it through the mesh filter when I poured it so I didn't get any clumps or debris in my sprayer that could clog it. And now for the secret for painting furniture with latex paint. I mixed some calcium carbonate powder with some water. Honestly, I don't measure it, but I think it's supposed to be like 5 tablespoons calcium carbonate with a little bit of water to make it into like a donut glaze. And then you put that into 1 cup of latex paint and mix it together really well. This calcium carbonate powder makes the latex paint adhere way better than if you just use latex paint. From my experience, I would not just use plain latex paint on furniture. It's not very durable and it just doesn't hold on to furniture very well. Before I started spraying the nightstands, I tested the spray on a piece of cardboard, making sure I wasn't spraying too much or too little and that I liked how it looked. Then I sprayed a coat of paint on the nightstands. Obviously, if you don't want to spray, you can brush the paint on instead. A sprayer is way faster for me, and I prefer the brush-free finish. After I got a light coat on everything, I opened up the drawers and sprayed the tops and sides of the drawers. I let the paint dry for an hour or so, and then I painted another coat on. Then I emptied the paint out of the sprayer, and without cleaning out the sprayer, I poured in some water-based polyurethane top coat. But I totally forgot to put the mesh filter on, so I poured it back out. Thankfully, that can was empty. I put a mesh filter on, and then I poured it back in. And then I mixed the poly really well to make it mix with the paint that was left in the sprayer. Mixing a little bit of the paint in with the poly makes the poly look a lot better, especially on dark colors. Then I sprayed it onto the nightstand, and I totally sprayed too much. So before it dried with a bunch of drips that I would have had to sand a lot, I brushed it out the best that I could and let it all dry. Thankfully, you couldn't really see the brush marks in the top coat, but I lightly sanded everything with a fine grit foam sanding pad to make sure everything felt nice and smooth. Then I cleaned up the dust and I adjusted my settings on the sprayer to not spray as much this time. And I sprayed a couple of light coats, letting it dry between the coats. Then I removed the plastic from the drawers and put the original hardware back on, since that's what my sister wanted. Before I share what it looks like now, please take a second to hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave us a comment telling us what you think of the makeover. It really helps get our videos out to more people, and we really appreciate your love. So here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like now. Aren't they so cute? I love this deep blue, especially since it made it so much easier to paint with all of the rustic texture on these nightstands. I think that I personally would have left off the corner braces if these were mine, but what would you have done? Real quick, a couple of weeks after painting them, I did a scratch test, and it's not scratching off. I did the same process on this test board, but I did not add the calcium carbonate powder to the paint, and look at how easy it is to scratch off. And I did the test board almost a week before I did the nightstands. The calcium carbonate powder makes all of the difference. Oh, and I sold these to my sister in exchange for some shirts from her clothing business. Win-win, right?